many of you have seen The Lion King? You know, it's an amazingly popular animated movie. I think it was the highest grossing animated movie ever made until Frozen. The Lion King is actually consciously influenced by archetypes as well as unconsciously influenced by them. So it's a bit of a cheat, I would say, in some sense, but for the purposes that we're using it for, I think it's just fine. And so
partly what you might think about is that its relationship to archetypal themes that made it so overwhelmingly popular. Same being the case with, say, books and movies like Harry Potter or the entire Marvel series. Marvel series is quite interesting. I know somebody who wrote for Batman and for Wolverine. I know Batman isn't a Marvel comic, but one of the things that he told me that was quite interesting was that once these characters take off and establish a life of their own, they have a backstory, and which becomes part of the mythology that's collectively held by the readers. And if you can invent an alternative universe where you can muck about with the backstory, but otherwise you better stick with it, or the readers are going to write you and tell you that you've got the story wrong. And so there's a bit of a collaboration between the writers and the readers after these things take on a life of their own. And so, and of course, they tend to, the comic books in particular, tend towards mythological themes very, very rapidly.
Anyways, Carl Jung was a fascinating person, I think. You can read his autobiography/biography, which is called Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, which in many ways I think is an unfortunate book, because it's usually the only book that people read that is
more or less by Jung. And it is more popularly accessible, which is probably a good thing, but it's also, it's not as rigorous as his other books. And so the problem with someone like Jung is you kind of have to read him as much as you can in the original, because interpreting him is not a very straightforward matter. He was a very visionary person, by which I mean he had an incredible visual imagination, and he used that a lot. He used it in his therapy practice. I believe that most of his therapy clients were high in trait openness. I have a lot of clients who are high in trait openness. They kind of seek me out because I'm high in trait openness, and they watch my videos and that sort of thing, and they're interested in what I'm doing. And many of them are astute dreamers and prolific dreamers, and many open people, in my experience, have archetypal dreams. Whereas people who are lower in openness, they either don't dream at all, or they don't remember their dreams as much, or they're not interested in them, and they're not interested in the mythological underpinnings of them. So I've taught psychology, roughly speaking, to many different types of people, including lawyers and physicians, and they tend to be higher in trait conscientiousness than in openness. And they're much more interested in the practical applications of psychology and maybe the big five theories than they are in the narrative underpinnings. And people say that when they went to Jung, they had Jungian dreams, and then when they went to Freud, they had Freudian dreams. And I don't really believe that's exactly true. I think it was a matter of selection bias, a priori selection bias on the part of the people who were likely to go see either of those two. And so, I've been struck by some clients in particular how unbelievably, continually they can generate deep archetypal dreams with a really coherent narrative structure.